He is so polarizing. I've seen people have him up as he's running back 2. I've seen people have him outside their top 12. It is wild. But Audric Estime out of Notre Dame, 5'11", 227 pounds. He is a big-bodied, powerful, versatile back. But 4.7 was it at the combine? Not exactly setting alight any weight-adjusted speed score. Fans, are you a Estime believer, or you got that athleticism when speaking to him?
Yeah, I'm probably on the lower side, I think, with Estime. As you mentioned, the combine didn't do him any favours, but I think when you look at his production, he's actually been a really productive back when you go through the college and even going back as far as high school. When he was in high school, 10.5 yards per carry, so showing that he can definitely be efficient with the ball in his hands right back to high school. Came in as a 4-star recruit, and then, as you mentioned, the big body back, he's a bulldozer. He's a guy that can definitely run through defenders. Yards after contact, 4.27 yards per attempt, which is one of the highest in this class. You touched upon the fact this past year's where I think this past year is the one that's really been the breakout year. You look at the fact that over 1,000 rushing yards, the 18 touchdowns. It's been a great year from him this past year, which has boosted his draft capital. I think he's got a fighting chance, even though he had the poor combine. I think he's a guy that could get into day 2. And I think it's because of, as you mentioned earlier, he's one of those backs where you kind of know his role. You know he's that big-bodied guy. You know he's going to be that early down grinder. Doesn't really offer a great deal in terms of the receiving work. Not really seen too much from him in college, but you know what you're getting in terms of running the ball. So I think he's going to be a great early down back in the NFL that could be hopefully paired up with a more electric running back in a backfield in a committee. But we mentioned about the combine and how he had a bad 40 time, and I think that then gets him labelled as somebody that's not the most agile in terms of running the ball. But I think when you actually watch him on tape, he's actually a lot better than I think a lot of people give him credit for. They mentioned the north-south runner, the between the tackles runner. But when I watched the tape, I actually thought he actually looks pretty good in terms of the jump cuts he can make, the way that he can make defenders miss. I think he's a lot better than what people give him credit for. So I think there's maybe a little bit more there than what we do give him credit for. Obviously, the top end speed, that's not his game. The receiving work, probably not his game. But the early down running back that I think a lot of teams are going to look for in the NFL. I think the NFL's starting to become more of a get that early down bruising back, and then that opens up the passing game for a lot of teams. We saw it with Buffalo for years, haven't we, where didn't really have a running game, and that kind of limited what Josh Allen could do. But as soon as you get a competent running back in, it opens up the whole offense. So I think Estime and what he offers in the running game is going to appeal to a lot of teams, and as that early down back, as I say, whether that equates to good things for fantasy, I know we love receiving backs in fantasy football rather than guys that just run, because we get so much more points, especially if you're playing PPR leagues. But definitely a guy that I'm interested in to see what happens in the NFL draft, what kind of draft capital he gets, but not somebody that I'm super high and super excited on grabbing in my rookie drafts.
Yeah, I think like my rookie model really liked him until you add in the weight adjusted speed score, and that brings him down. I think it was 13th percentile, and that knocks him. And he's kind of like 4th or 5th back in my model for me. There's a lot to like. I said I agree with you in terms of I think he's a better athlete than perhaps people are giving him credit for. I always say that I don't count the combine, but it's almost like a red flag of, do I need to go back and check whether I've analyzed the player wrong? And you watch him play, and it's like, okay, you're not an elite athlete, but you're an above average athlete. And then you see the combine, and it's like, okay, did I miscalculate this? And you go back and watch the tape again, and it's like, no, I think he's a good athlete. I think, I've seen numbers quoted that, he was recorded running 21 mile an hour and stuff like this. And it's like, yeah, I don't know if he's a explosive athlete, but I think he's a good enough athlete to transition to the NFL. I think his agility is underrated. I agree with you. I think the receiving work is a question mark, but I think he's a plus in the pass pro. Obviously, the size, the bulk is going to help him there. And you see the way he's been used in college. This isn't a guy that's had, 4 or 5 receptions. This is a, 20, 30 target guy every year of his career. And it's like, okay, he's not going to be a value add in the receiving game. He's not a guy that's going to be able to take, a check down to the house just off a whim. But actually, he can be a reliable check down option that's not going to be exciting, not going to get solid, but he's going to get you what he can out of it. And I sort of think, yeah, he's probably not a plus, but I don't think he's a massive minus in the receiving game. And I think that I'll probably end up slightly ahead of consensus on Estime, because I think there's enough talent, and I'm always going to bet on a young guy that's big, that's got the production that he's had from a decent college. And I think he's got versatility across all sorts of different schemes, which, you mentioned the NFL is cyclical. We've moved to these 2 high shells to stop the explosive pass plays. So another safety's gone out the box. Linebackers are getting smaller. So let's go to a power back. And it's all going to come full circle in a few years, and we'll start loading the box again. But the other thing that we've seen is that NFL offenses, it's no longer just a case of, you think of like the Texans or the Broncos offense, where it was like, right, 80% of their running plays are outside zone, and it's all built off that. Every NFL offense now has to run outside zone, inside zone, gap, power, counter, trap. Like, you need to be able to run all the different varieties of run play. And I think Estime's got that in his bag. So I think that coaches are potentially going to like him a little bit more than it seems that the Dynasty community does at the moment.